going to start out as we start out in our greetings and power. Power to the people.
Power to the people. Power to the people.
Power to the people. Power to the people. It's appropriate. It's not just a slogan. It's appropriate to address this question. Because it is only through the struggle for power will we be able to direct public policy to meet the needs of the masses. The only way we will be able to turn around the legislation for legalization for all, to disregard one's criminalization by the bourgeois state, to deny, to overcome the criminalization for some false border that we didn't make, we didn't have any reason to respect, is by struggling for power. We have to be able to amass enough power, the one thing good about Cohen Last is you get to sum up use what other people would say, but also you end up, they steal all your lines. But the real thing is, we've got to be able to create the critical mass of human motion to frighten the ruling class to accede to our demands until we gain enough strength to actually seize power. So we've got to fight the immediate demands, and that's against the impacts of the economic and political crisis that the imperial system, that they try to put on our backs, and with the long-term gain, with the long-term view of struggling for power to reshape the world in our image and not in theirs. How we achieve the jobs? Build the fight back movement against the impacts of economic and political crisis on the masses. We got to build a united front that links the various aspects into a joint struggle against the imperialist system, and in the meantime for relief from unemployment, from foreclosures, against the cutbacks in social services, against environmental degradation, the exclusion of those of us who have been criminalized from the mainstream economy, and the super exploitation of immigrant workers, the deprivation for all of us of our democratic rights. It's part of the political crisis they're imposing on us. Jobs is essential to the fight back program. The private sector will not provide, because we've seen that demonstration. They got more money than God, and what they did was use it to consolidate their own power and wealth, to pay themselves, and not, in no way, try to create employment. And their servants in Washington enabled that. They gave them $1 trillion and didn't report, with no strings attached at all. We should all be mindful of that. Therefore, it's crazy to think, if we have any understanding of the system under which we live, to think that the private sector will provide jobs. They thrive on unemployment. They thrive on unemployment. They have us compete against each other for less and less, and in order to keep us divided from each other, we're willing to undercut each other. So there's no interest in the private sector to provide full employment. It's only interest if, for us, for an economy for use and production, as opposed to an economy that is only driven by profit and for profit. So therefore, we have to strive for a program of public works, government jobs, or income at living wages. Must be a paramount demand of the working class. To make the rich pay for it must be a paramount demand of the working class. Ending the imperialist wars of aggression in Afghanistan and Iraq, and transferring those expenditures for domestic recovery and reparations for the victims abroad must become paramount demands of the working class. We have to restore the taxation on the rich. It's necessary means to reverse their offensive against the working class and oppressed people. We must systematically develop a program and organization for protracted struggles to move the government to provide relief for the people. That's easier said than done, but it must be said in order for it to be done. Everybody's not raising the demand for full employment. Everybody's not raising the demand for a public works program. Some people think that it's a sin, and I guess it is a sin against the interests of the ruling class. because their government, their view of government is organized violence to keep us in place, not the instrument to meet the needs of the people. Whether that's through production, whether that's through provision of social services. So there's two views here, two world views in contention. It's a reflection of the class struggle on the ground. Now, though, is the time to prepare for the needed victory. Essentially, to develop organization and consciousness of the masses of people needed to organize and win the fight back. We don't have the conditions yet to do it. We don't have the conditions yet to win. We don't have enough organization. We don't have the necessary level of class consciousness and concern for each other. We've got to use this time to prepare for victories in the future. Contrary to what bourgeois media tells us, conditions aren't getting better. This recession's not relieving. Things are going to get worse, and so we've got to prepare ourselves now so that we can accumulate forces, so that we can refine our program, so that we can build the necessary force to fight and win. The ruling monopoly capitalist class is on the offensive, at home and abroad. It's our task to rally the workers and oppressed nationalities to push back in self-defense, and as Eric pointed out, in which I unite, to advance the struggle for power, to go on the offensive. So this is the time to prepare and accumulate forces. We have some history in a struggle of achievement in fight back, and specifically in achieving public works and workers' rights. Jeanette gave us some excellent insight into what some of that history is, namely its experience both of the international and the U.S. working class during the Great Depression of the 1930s. We have history. It's a high point of successful working class struggle. We need to review that history and draw out lessons that are applicable for today. In my review, my limited preparation, I primarily relied on Labor's Untold Story. If you haven't read it, it is a must-read. It's like Zinn's People's History of the United States. Must-reads that you have. The history is part of what, as Jeanette says, they put away, that nobody knows about the Workers' Alliance. Well, when most of us go to school, we know nothing about the history of the working class struggles that have gotten us where we are today. Literally have gotten us where we are today. We're all familiar, or I hope so, because I don't have all the info, but some of what is referred to. We're all familiar with the phenomena of the Great Depression. Production worldwide halved. This country halved over the course of the years. World trade down by 65%. 25% unemployment in the United States. In oppressed nationality communities, Afro-American communities in particular, 50% unemployment. Immiseration and impoverishment of the masses of people is what the capitalist system routinely on a cyclical basis delivers for us. It is a system that is intended not to meet the needs of the people, but to promote maximum profit for fewer and fewer members of society. In the Great Depression of the 30s was the most extreme example that the system had demonstrated, although there were routinely deep recessions and depressions as the system has matured and decayed. From 1929 through World War II, a most intense period of class struggle in the world and in the U.S. From 1930 to 1935, I'm going to refer to an excerpt from Labor's Untold. From 1930 to 35, and this is the quote, "The weapon of the jobless, the organization with which they fought and defended themselves, was the National Unemployed Council. It was organized in Chicago July 4th, 1930, at a convention attended by 1,320 delegates. Until the advent of the CIO, which is 1935, it was perhaps the most vital and necessary of all American organizations, obviously from the perspective of the workers, the most vital organization. It had councils and branches in 46 states, and as well as in almost every town and city of the nation. For the first time in history, there was virtually no scabbing. Jeanette pointed to that, gave us images of that. No scabbing during the Depression. The unemployed instead appeared on the picket line behind the banner of the Unemployed Council, helping win the strikes of those fortunate enough to be employed. Its primary function was agitation and mass demonstrations to the end that people might be fed. It increased the relief allotments of literally millions, campaigned for public works and unemployment insurance. Negroes, hardest hit of any section of the population, were among the most active in the council, which fought militantly against every form of racist discrimination. Such was the council's power that the AFL reversed its position against unemployment insurance. As we know, the AFL is the reactionary right wing of the Federation of the U.S. labor movement. The fact of its existence prevented the nation from ignoring or forgetting the 12 to 17 million who were jobless in 1933. One of the unemployed council's big jobs in all parts of the country was the preventing of evictions. Some indication of the vast size of this job can be gained from the fact that in 5 industrial cities of Ohio alone, eviction orders were issued against nearly 100,000 families in 2.5 years beginning in January 1930. In Chicago, 3,611 families, including 26,515 children, were evicted during the year beginning in December 1931. During the 8 months ending in June 30, 1932, some 185,794 families in New York City were served with dispossession notices. But 77,000 of these families were moved back into their premises by the people of the Unemployed Council. Again, an example of both the depth of the oppression and the importance of the resistance. And that resistance was only manifest by organization of the victims. That the unemployed councils were of those who were affected, that it was national in scope, that it was focused on essential demands of the masses of people. That they fought on a unified program for everyone, black and white, men, women, children. Important experience that I'll get to later on in my thing, but it is an example that obviously I think that we need that kind of mass organization to respond to for our fight back today. Mass national scope. Jeanette alluded to it, and I wanted to bring this to give the quality of the resistance movement. From the first two, the demonstrations and hunger marches were regarded, but this is important, by police and government as initial steps in revolution. The police in a score of cities jailed and clubbed the unemployed with an almost unprecedented ferocity, justifying their actions on the grounds that the jobless were trying to overthrow the government. The first nationwide protest against unemployment was called by the Trade Union Unity League and the Communist Party on March 6, 1930. On that date, huge meetings were held in all parts of the country. An estimated 1,250,000 unemployed participating in them. More than 100,000 demonstrators gathered in Detroit. Some 50,000 came together in Chicago. A like number met in Pittsburgh, and there were huge crowds of unemployed at meetings in Milwaukee, Cleveland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Denver, Seattle, and Philadelphia. In New York, and I believe this was the image that Jeanette provided us with, in New York, 110,000 packed Union Square. Suddenly, the vast throng was attacked by 25,000 police. Hundreds